Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear friends, let us go into the breach. So I was thinking that we should really talk. I remember I was telling you earlier in the week we were going to talk about everything going on in Washington about with reparations and things like that. And Joe, who's usually the voice of reason amongst the two of us, said, "Listen, that's all a political stunt. It's all political posturing. I know what we're talking about on Sunday. I'm warning you ahead of time. Most of you out there already know how my temper can get going. Tonight's installment, I read the articles that Joe Resinello sent me because we're going to talk about, Joe will introduce, we're going to talk about this conversation. And there's a bunch of different articles that came out. And with each subsequent article, my doctor should have been present giving me blood pressure medication because I was holding my chest. I couldn't breathe that well. And I'm not even joking. All right. But this is a conversation that that really puts us into the breach, deep into the breach. I'll let Joe introduce it and you'll understand what I'm talking about in a second. So
quick shout out to Jonathan Ross with HolyFaith Media. He picked us up, which we're eternally grateful for. Jonathan's out of Niagara Falls, Ontario. So it's a step in the right direction for the front line. We're very excited.
We get, our audience is growing. A lot of people are watching the front line with Joe and Joe. It's just going to keep building from here. But also noteworthy with HolyFaith Media. It's HolyFaith Media 1. They're on Facebook. They're on YouTube. They're on Bitchute. And the owner is Jonathan Ross. But it's a good resource because there's a lot of videos that they're posted, particularly on the YouTube page, that are informative from a lot of different people out there talking about a lot of different subjects. But underlying everything is they're all in the breach too. So shout out. It's a great job that HolyFaith Media is doing. In being like what would you call it? Like a hub for all the things that many of us are talking about, because again, the conversations are going on all over the place. So we thank you, HolyFaith Media 1.
And getting to what Joe was kind of setting up for tonight's show, when we were talking about, like, during the week, as we always do, what we're going to discuss, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about Pride, because June is Pride Month. We both work in New York City. It's everywhere. I mean, it's in our jobs. It's in the path station. It's in the subway station. So I think it's appropriate to discuss it. Just a little history. Pride Month, as in June, was established by two American presidents, William Jefferson Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama.
No shock there.
So that's how the history of it. It is, it's a standard, like, I don't want to say it's an American holiday, but it was declared by a president. But the twist on how I'd like to approach it is, how is this agenda/lobby affecting Main Street USA? Because that's what this show is about. I mean, the front line, we are on the front line. We're regular guys. I like to say we have PhDs in common sense. We're blue-collar guys, and we want to relate, how is this agenda making its way to Main Street USA?
Well, just right there, remember, it's one thing to say, to have the mentality, okay, there are a lot of different people in this country, in San Francisco and New York City. People do things that we might not agree with. They have a lifestyle, not just on this level, with the LGBT pride, but just in general. I don't have much in common with people who live that New York lifestyle. Okay. But what they're doing is they're forcing this onto Main Street. They're forcing it into the public schools, as we're going to talk about, and everything else. They're making it where you can't believe what it is you want to believe. You have to believe what we want you to believe, or we are going to take over. And they have the schools and the civil institutions, and we'll teach your kids, or indoctrinate, I think would be a better word. We'll indoctrinate your kids to believe in what we tell them they should believe. So that's how it's really like. I know you're going to talk about examples of how it gets to Main Street, or how it's manifesting itself on Main Street, but that's how it gets there. It gets rammed through the media and the education establishment down to Main Street.
I would agree. I think some of these articles, you'll be shocked frankly. I think Joe was as well. And again, the type of stories we discuss on this show are not covered most times in the mainstream media. That's basically what we do. We try to find things around the country that aren't being covered in the mainstream, and we try to discuss them because, again, our conversation is your conversation. That's our motto at the end of every show, and that's what we do. With that, we'll go into the first segment. Basically, there was a psychological study that claims that people dehumanize transgenders by refusing to date them. Now, what am I talking about? I'm a straight male. If I was single, I'm married. Obviously, I'm not dating anybody. But if I was a single, straight male, and I refused to date a man who dressed up like a woman, this article is saying I'm dehumanizing him.
But remember real quick, but remember the word they're using there, okay, in this article, dehumanizing. Who else dehumanized their victim? Nazis. So remember, they choose their words, Joe. We've talked about this a million times. They choose their words very carefully. When they accuse you of dehumanizing another human being, they're comparing you to a Nazi. I'll shut up.
And again, I always say this, names matter. This is in Psychology Today, and the article was written by Karen Blair, so you could look that up. Basically, in the article, they likened this dehumanization to a discrimination whereby, say, someone would not be willing to be involved in interracial dating / marriage, and they called it an act of prejudice. I found that to be interesting because both of us are married to black women.
Yeah.
So I found it, to be honest with you, I think this is absolute lunacy. If you're a heterosexual, why would you want to date a man dressed up as a woman?
Right.
I mean, what kind of twisted reality are we thinking about? I mean, I just don't. I think it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Because look, we always talk about what their overall agenda is. Their overall agenda is to take this society at large and the culture and turn society against anyone who disagrees with them. Okay, you're the bully. Again, we did a show last week about the bullies and how they are the bullies. Okay, because they want to impose their way of life on us. Okay, and our children, and make sure we fall into lockstep. But they want to turn society against you. How do they do that? The way they're doing it every single day, and been doing it at least since Trump got elected, because we're just combating hatred. We're combating hate and hate speech. Now, let's take this one step further, okay? Are men and women, should they be forced to date somebody who they just don't have a preference in dating? Even if it was interracial. Again, we're married to black women. Doesn't matter. It matters to some people. Some people want to, you ever hear the saying, we grew up with it, you got to marry your own kind. You ever hear that kind of thing? That has nothing to do with white, by the way. That's another thing that they've made up.
Well, black people do that too.
Right, well, yeah, black. Am I supposed to say that a black woman who doesn't want to date a white guy, she's dehumanizing, let's say, the white Italian guy, all right? Because she says, well, I just want to date black men, all right? And to me, that's fine. Who are we to tell somebody who they should or should not date, all right? But what you're saying is that if a man doesn't want to date a man who thinks he's a woman, that I am dehumanizing that person, which means, of course, I am bullying them and I am victimizing them because I say, I'm not a homosexual. I don't want to date a man, okay? And I certainly don't want to date a man who thinks he's a woman. Even, and here's another thing. Is a homosexual dehumanizing a transgendered man? Because a homosexual, last time I checked, likes other men, is attracted to other men. What if he says, well, I don't want to go out with a man who thinks he's a woman. I'm attracted to men. Is he dehumanized? You see the swamp that this could get into, Joe? Do you see how, if you break it down, do they realize, well, we know how nefarious they are, so of course they realize everything. But do you see how they try to twist and turn arguments? The problem is they twist and turn it so much it becomes incoherent. Like there's nothing logical about it. It's completely incoherent. Go ahead. I want Karen, what's her name? Karen Blair? Go ahead. Go tell a homosexual man that he's dehumanizing the transgendered man because he won't date him or her. Again, I get confused. He won't date him because he dresses like a woman. No, I want to see how well that goes over. Down in front of Stonewall in Greenwich Village. I want to see how that goes over down there. Are they going to, again, remember, this argument is directed at people like us, okay, single men like us who are heterosexual, but it's going to apply to other people is my point too.
I don't know. I think it's crazy.
It's
just crazy.
The whole thing.
I don't even know. I can't even I find it to be almost laughable. It's pure lunacy.
But they're making it where, Joe, you can't laugh. It is pure lunacy. You're right. It's comic, okay? Because when somebody tells you something that you know to be untrue, and you just know it by nature, you don't need to hang a PhD on your wall or anything like. You just know by nature something to be true, and you're attacked for it. I mean, that's what's going on. That's what's going. They make you out to be, well, you must have a screw loose. Why? Because what I already know by nature, I won't let you convince me. I won't let you convince me of the opposite of that. In other words, I laugh in your face when you do this, and then their response is always the same thing. Well, you're a hater, you're a bigot, blah 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 blah. And you know, unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. As Roseanne's joining in. Hi, Roseanne. We're doing well. She says, hi, J&J. How are you? We're doing well, Roseanne. But yeah, it is lunacy. Come on, let's hash this out, because again, this is going to have, and this of course warms my heart, as you know, when leftists fight against other leftists, because the feminists have a problem with transgenderism too, you know. In other words, they're having, you know, about how you categorize people, because feminists obviously are for women. Now they don't really, they agree with, for the most part, with the LGBT crowd. But look at the case that happened the other day, where the female track star up in Connecticut, you heard about that?
I didn't actually.
Okay, so now this is what happens, and this pertains to what I was talking about. A girl, a female teenager, runs on a track team in Connecticut, okay? And she comes in second place every time. She's a beast. She's been running since she came out of the womb, okay? This girl, that's what she does. A boy who thinks he's a girl, who's now on the track team, is now coming in first every time. So guess who's making a beef? Not two jamokes like us. The girl and her parents are saying, this is wrong. Your definition of tolerance is going to an intolerable level, because now the girl who's worked so hard to get where she is, to be a winner in her sport, is now being beaten unfairly by a boy. Unfairly. And you see, now the feminists don't know which way to go, because if they go for the girl, if they take the side of the girl, and they are feminists, so they have to support her, what are they doing? What's the LGBT crowd going to say about the feminists who are going to back this girl up? But you see how it kind of like, it's going to cause infighting.
It's funny. Do you remember Martina Navratilova?
Mm-hmm.
She actually spoke out against it, and then they backed her down.
Well, see, here's the thing.
That was in the news.
Who's more powerful on the politically correct left? The lesbian feminist Martina Navratilova or the LGBT crowd? You see now, and again, this is when you and I sit back, open the Johnny Walker Black, and just watch them fight, because that's not our fight. That's not our fight. You go ahead, knock yourself out. Do whatever you want. It's like they turn the guns on each other. You know what I mean?
It's insane. Like I said, pure lunacy. I have another one that's pure lunacy for you. MasterCard is going to let gender-confused customers pick their names on credit cards. So basically what they're calling it is they're rolling out a program called your True Name cards for the transgender community. This is the quote: "This will be achieved through a sensitive and private process, free of personal questions, that does not require a legal name change." Now, this is the day and age of identity theft. This is where, when Joe Resinello goes to the DMV in New Jersey, I have to provide 6 points, a passport, an old license, a gas and electric bill, a credit card.
Or they'll kick you right out of the DMV.
So now you're basically permitting a human being to have two names. I cannot believe, from a practical perspective, that that's going on. Never mind the type of legality that goes, the confusion that could potentially cause from a legal perspective.
Again, this takes tolerance to an intolerable level. No, your name, the one that the FBI has on file, and the one that the Census Bureau has on file,
you pay your taxes
the one you pay your taxes with, that goes on your credit card. Okay, that's it. Whatever somebody refers to you as, your alias. You listen, you can have an alias. There's no legal legal prohibition for you to have an alias if you want an alias. If your name's John Smith and you want to be called Jane Anderson, that's your business. You identify as Jane Anderson if that's what you want, I guess. All right, but not on your credit card.
But also
on your credit card, you're John Smith. Because guess what? I don't know how unhinged you are. I know that's going to go over well because how dare you call a transgender person unhinged? But the boys, you're talking about airport security. You're talking about getting a driver's license. How about voting? You're talking about all these different things where your legal name is required. And it's not unjust discrimination to say your legal name is required. When you go into the bar in the village, you could call yourself and have other people call you whatever you want. But under the law, you see, the law applies equally to me, to Joe, to our families, and to all people. It applies to you too, with no exception. MasterCard should not be allowed to do this. Congress should act for a change and go against these corporations when they try to do this. MasterCard should not be allowed to do this.
It just goes to show you how politics is swaying these people. This goes against all common sense. All common sense. I mean, think about what you have to do to get a credit card. The type of identification that you have to put your social security number. You have to show like
income statements and everything. And everyone says the same thing. Joseph Pasillo.
Make up a name, but it's all they're doing is pandering to this lobby. That's all this is.
Right.
All common sense is being thrown out the window.
Right.
This is insanity.
Well, you're trying to apply common sense to a situation where there is no common sense. If you disagree with the agenda just on, let's say, using common sense or practical reason, which is to say morality. All right. If you look at it from that point of view, you're the problem. They don't have the problem. They're totally happy with who they are. It's you who have the problem. Well, guess what? Society still has to function. And how we identify ourselves in public records and on our bank statements and with identification all matters. It matters to the state. It matters to the proper function of society. People know who you are. It doesn't mean you don't have privacy. But everywhere you go, you got to show an ID.
Absolutely.
Okay. If your ID if the name on your ID doesn't match up with the name on your credit card, guess what happens? They can call the cops and have you arrested because you have a fraudulent credit card. Okay. So the answer to MasterCard, again, forget about the people who want to have their name changed on the card. MasterCard should not be allowed to do this, and a whole host of other things that these banks and credit card companies get away with. But the point is, they should not be allowed to do this. Period. Exclamation point. Nobody stands up for us in our government. Because you know why? Because Republicans and Democrats, when it comes to letting businesses do whatever the hell they want, generally speaking, one group wants to tax them more, one group wants to tax them less. They let them get away with murder. Okay? They could do whatever they want. I got to tell you what, you'd be hard-pressed to find some dyed-in-the-wool conservative Republicans that would call for them on the MasterCard to say, no, you're not changing the rules. Person's given name, the name that's on all their legal documents, that's the name that goes on the credit card.
And if you want to change your name, do it legally and pay the fee.
That's it. You pay the fee. No, we're not waiving the fee. We're not waiving the fee as a society. You pay. You want to change your name, you pay. When you want to change it back, you pay again. If you're gender fluid, and that means that in the next 6 months, you're going to have 100 different identities, then you pay the fee 100 different times. We're not paying for it, okay? And I say by law, they shouldn't be allowed to do this.
No, it's crazy. I can't even believe they're, like, to be honest with you, just from a legal perspective, that they'd be permitted. But that's their true name. So, again, pandering to that particular agenda, as so many people are right now, everywhere. Everywhere.
Well, it's unfortunate that and this is, might as well get into it in this particular atrocity that you just brought up. We have to do something in this country. Joe and I talk about it all the time. What's the purpose of the Frontline with Joe and Joe? Why are we here? We're here to hear ourselves talk? No. We're trying to figure out by throwing our views, our beliefs, and throwing the truth out there into the breach that, well, what are we doing with that? People, we have to raise our consciousness. Our consciousness in America has been dulled by so many different things. We allow the politicians to get away with what they want. We allow the banks to get away with what they want. Because I come out of my bank and it says on the door, it says proud supporters of the LGBT community. I would say, yeah, I support them too. I don't walk down the street pointing fingers at people and saying, oh, you're gay, you're transgender. No, I'm not bothering them. What does it mean you're a proud supporter? I don't get it. Okay, but they do this, and then they want to change rules for them. And like you said, you go try to apply for a loan. And they make you jump through hoops. You go to DMV and have to figure out, oh, did I leave my social security number at home? Did I leave my social security card? Do I have my 6 points? And you're talking to the cop when you go in, do I have my 6 points? All right, and you get frazzled anytime you have to deal with the state. All right, but then they just go too far. And at some point, our consciousness as a nation, all right, as people who value morality, social order, natural order, the natural law, we have to wake up and start pushing back. Stop doing businesses with some. Joe and I are going to start to identify some of these companies too, like we did a couple of weeks ago with Disney. When Disney said they were going to boycott Alabama, we started our own little boycott. We're not having anything to do with Disney, and we want you to not have anything to do with Disney until they come out and apologize to the state of Alabama. Imagine 2 guys doing that. Imagine 20 million people doing that. Imagine 40 million people doing that.
They
don't
care.
And then we'd start to get at, look, we're never going to get what we want completely, nor maybe do we want that. But what we want is we want some basic fairness in all this. And right now, the corporations, why I brought this up, Joe, the corporations are taking advantage of us. The MasterCards of the world will charge you out your you-know-what with their usurious compound interest. See if you try to change your name on the credit card.
Not happening.
Not happening. All right. So let's, again, was my point is, let's start to raise our consciousness, yes, and have that determine our actions when it comes to how we're interacting with society. I think starting boycotts of corporations, even if it's for now your own personal boycott, stop doing businesses with the people that attack you, and at least do business with the people that at least are neutral on these things. Because like you said, working in New York City, it's all over the place. It's all over the place. It's in your face. I'm surprised I'm not dead yet.
Next story, we're going to go to Canada. We're going to go to Ottawa. Teacher traumatizes a 6-year-old by telling her there is no such thing as boys and girls. This is in the Ottawa-Carleton District School System. Basically, in the article, the girl came home and basically said why being a girl was not real. This is to her parents. She's saying, why is it being a girl? It's not real to be a girl. Basically, she said she wanted to go to the doctor, to her folks, because she was a girl and she was getting confused by this teacher as a result of like this particular, I don't know, diatribe she probably had in her classroom. But I'll be honest with you. This is the type of thing 20 years ago you'd go to jail for. How could you possibly tell a 6-year-old there's no such thing as boys and girls? This whole gender fluidity thing, it's insanity.
It's a hoax.
But you're causing a kid. A kid doesn't understand things.
But like Joe, but they're like we always talk about. They're doing this by design. They know the kid is below the age of reason. They know the kid doesn't understand this and can't process this. But they're trying to plant the seed now. Listen, I told you this before in the 1990s when there was a procession in New York, there was a march in New York, and the gays and the lesbians were marching in New York, and the guy held up a sign and it said, "America is a queer nation. Better get used to it." And the guy standing next to him was holding up a sign that says, "We're coming after your children." Why is this a shock to anybody that they're doing this now? That they're using their proxy warriors in the education establishment, all right, to try to get to your kids. They're telling you flat out, we don't care about your religious beliefs. We don't care if you're Catholic. We don't care if you're a Jew. We don't care if we don't really care about anything. If you teach your kids that sodomy is unnatural, okay, or that it's disordered for a man to believe he's a woman, we will teach it to your children. And you'll get into it more. No, and you'll have nothing to say about it.
I mean, the American Psychiatric Association still calls transgender people, it's a disorder.
It's a disorder.
This is, scientists, by the way, not Joe and Joe, scientists still. And also, transgender folks have a life expectancy of a little over 30. The average American has a life expectancy close to 80. And in the article that I got that particular statistic from, they said it's a little bit higher, the lifespan of a transgender person, than someone who's in a gang, street gang.
Why would they want to promote that?
Why would a parent even encourage that? You're even seeing in some cases parents encouraging. This is not a healthy lifestyle. This is, and by the way, most of these people commit suicide. This is not, their suicide rate, please look it up if you're listening to this. Look up the suicide rate of transgender individuals.
But real quick, what they'll say is, yes, it's tragic that they commit suicide, but it's not anything having to do with their disorder. It has to do with all the guilt and shame that's heaped on them
I would
by
disagree.
people like you, Joe and Joe, and by your Catholic Church, and by conservative Christians and by conservative Jews who will not accept that this is not a disorder. When we say, no, we will not accept that it's not a disorder. It is a disorder, all right? And that is science. That's a statement of science, scientific
Well,
truth.
we talked about
right?
that a few weeks ago at Johns Hopkins. They said most people who basically involve themselves, this is both doctors and individuals, in changing their sex via some type of medical process, are not satisfied with it. The doctor not satisfied with the outcome, and the patient.
Right.
So this is not the solution. And again, these people aren't living long. You have to ask yourself that. Is this a healthy lifestyle? Is this something you want to encourage your child? And I know what they'll say. It's not my choice. I was born this way.
No,
and
they're not.
again, what I will say to you is, please attach the scientific proof that basically backs that up.
Well, you know that there is.
And I don't want to hear about Lady Gaga. I want to hear science.
Last time I checked, Joe and Joe are not scientists, nor is Lady Gaga. Okay? No, Lady Gaga, you're not born that way. And you're not doing anybody any favors by telling them they are born that way. Okay? You go talk to any ex-gay person. I know that's going to be shocking. All right? Might get us deplatformed from Facebook to actually say there are many, many ex-gay people. They identify as ex-gay, all right? And they will tell you straight up, no, well, a couple things. Number one, I wasn't born that way. And number two, I was lied to. That's the nefarious
Who's that
part.
one gentleman?
Joseph Sciambra.
Yeah,
Look up Joseph Sciambra, and all you prayerful people, pray for him. He's a good guy. He is an ex-homosexual, okay? He does not live that lifestyle anymore. And he tries to help. He goes right to the LGBT Pride Parade in San Francisco. He hands out rosaries. He talks to people. He loves people. This is a loving man. Okay, I've read his columns, and I follow him on Facebook. And if you talk to him or many people like him, they'll say we were lied to. We were lied to, and we were encouraged in many cases to live this kind of lifestyle, and because we didn't know any better. And he almost died. He almost died. He came back from the brink of death, and he has a pretty harrowing story of his conversion. But he's an ex-gay man, but guess what? But same type of thing. They don't want to listen to Frontline with Joe and Joe, and they don't want to listen to that Joe either, because Joseph Sciambra, he blows a hole in their narrative. You understand? He blows a hole in the side of the ship, Joe, because you know he's one of these guys saying that lifestyle that you encouraged me to live. No, that's a dead end. And he almost literally ended up dead, all right? And thank God he didn't. So my point is that you go ask a lot of people who are no longer living that lifestyle, who have put that lifestyle down and say, no, number one, you can change. You're not born that way. Yes, they would acknowledge that you need help, okay? It's not very easy, okay? Nobody's suggesting that. And that with some love and some psychiatric help. I know people, this blows it against it, some religious help, okay, will help you transform your life. But like you said, why wouldn't you want somebody to live what is objectively a more natural, a healthier lifestyle? Why would you encourage it, like you said, 6-year-olds to live an unhealthy lifestyle? To want to lose your life, to be content with a statistic that says people who have this condition are dead before they're 40?
That's insane.
That you live a little bit longer than a gang member? And we're supposed, here's this. Am I supposed to encourage that when I have kids? Or are you supposed to encourage that for your children?
Should this teacher be encouraging?
The teacher, this speaks to a whole other thing about what to do with these teachers. People, we talk about raising consciousness when it comes to corporations. We have to start taking back our state governments. Most states in this country, thank God, are in the hands of nominally sane people, okay? But we need even more sanity. We need to start taking back our state governments. We need to stop the fund. Remember something, I think we joked earlier about how I was gonna have a heart attack when I was reading all this, okay? But here's the thing that really bothers me more than anything. It makes the vein pop out of my head. They laugh at us. And you wanna know how they laugh at us? They laugh at us because what did the one woman say? I think you're gonna get into it. If you don't like it, take your kid and go to another school. Am I right?
Well, she said, I think something like the parents that don't like it are living in the dark ages.
Well, yeah, so we're in the dark ages. But then they're at, this is what I mean by they're laughing at you. Take your child to another school. Why are they laughing? Because they know, especially if you own a home, you're still paying through your property tax for that public education. You cannot, in this state, and Cardinal Dolan tried to do it in New York, and Andrew Cuomo stuck a knife in his back. Okay, he tried to get a tax credit against the property tax, so parents can use that money that they're saving on the property tax that would go for education for their own child's education. And obviously, that's not going to happen without a big groundswell of support. That's something that needs to happen, because the reason these teachers get away with what they get away with is because they continue to get your money in the form of property taxes, and they know that you're not going to do anything about it. People, you need to start opening your mouth. You need to start voting in people into the state assembly and the state legislatures that are going to say, yes, if you take your kid out of the public school, that portion of the property tax that goes for education, you could deduct off your property tax bill and send your child to a private or parochial school.
They'll never do it.
I think that, Joe, if people will it will stop being lukewarm about this. I agree with you. Believe me, the cynical part says, go ahead.
Because I think in these states, Louisiana has that. I mean, there are states that's possible, but in these states like New Jersey, New York, California, Illinois, they're shot, Joe. California we're living in the Middle Ages in California. There's a bubonic plague.
Did you hear about this? Go ahead. Tell the audience.
I mean, California, there's 16,000 people living in, this is LA, living in their car. There have been cases in hospital of typhoid fever. These are diseases that are basically contracted through rats. People are living look at the news in LA right now. This is what this practice, this disgusting governmental process that they're pushing, this is the result of it. This is the result of it. Look at what's going on in San Francisco. San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities in the whole world.
Not anymore.
It's a cesspool.
Yeah.
There's needles all over the streets. People cracking in the side on the sidewalk. I mean,
There's a picture
and
online.
that's coming, by the way, to New York.
Oh, no. It's New York.
It's not even. It will be here probably within the decade.
Here's my challenge to all the people in New York City who have a public service contract, a public employee unions contract with the city, whether you're a cop or fireman or teacher or any else. If you even remotely think like us on any of these things, and you see the swamp that has become your city, and you continue to vote for the Democrats simply for the reason that they're going to protect your contract, then you get what you deserve. You get what you deserve. If you won't sacrifice a nickel to renegotiate those contracts, and you let all this happen because you vote for people like de Blasio, okay, then you get what you deserve, and you get no sympathy from us. And we work in the city. So it's not like we're in some remote suburb in New Jersey. We work in the city. We see exactly how it is. And you people who have the power in New York City to actually do something about it, okay, you don't do it. You let the hipsters control everything. Yes, I'm pointing out cops, firemen, and teachers in particular in New York City who call themselves conservative, who keep voting for the likes of Bill de Blasio. All you people in Brooklyn and Queens and Staten Island, you keep voting for him.
Think about how much it costs to live in LA. I can remember years ago, a buddy of mine from high school lived in a section of the city called Mid-Wilshire. It's basically like a young adult community. And he was basically telling, this is 15 years ago. He was like, Joe, for $1 million, you get a house with bars on the window. $1 million. Mm-hmm. This is 15 years ago. So you're going to spend, let's just say, $1.3 million if you have it, to live in like a community in around LA, Redondo Beach, Hermosa, Santa Monica, wherever, you name it. And you're going to live and you're going to drive a block away from your house. You're going to have a tent city where people are crapping in the gutter. They're living amongst garbage, hypodermic needles. You're going to spend $1.3 million, raise your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be out of your mind.
Well, let me ask you this. I think I mentioned to you, for those of you who haven't seen it, just you take a couple keywords from what I'm about to say and go look, do a Google image search, okay? And this is kind of disgusting, but there's a picture going around online, all right, in San Francisco, in a street in San Francisco, where a guy's standing up in the gutter and he's defecating.
I saw it.
And in the background, there's people that are sitting at the outdoor cafe looking at him, okay? Now, my question very simply is this. This is San Francisco. This is where the Logos doesn't exist. There is no moral order. There is no social. Well, there is a social order. It's rich and poor. Here's my question. Do they all sit there while they're eating their quiche and they're sipping on their Grey Goose martinis and say, look how wonderful. He's expressing himself, darling, by defecating on the street. Do these people, do they do that? Or do they think to themselves, I think maybe we ought to start rethinking the way we do things in this city a little bit, because this can't be allowed. This can't be allowed because, like I said,
disease.
The disease.
You're getting, I mean, straight up and down, just from a disease perspective.
You don't have the right to do whatever you want. It's one thing that the left just can't seem to get through its collective head is you don't have the right to do what you want. No, you can't live on the street. You can't. Okay, and that in fairness to a lot of these homeless people, number one, they've become addicted for a variety of reasons. They're addicted to drugs, and then they're just being allowed to just live on the street. There can't be any shelters, I imagine, or anything like that.
If you care so much for homeless people, then build shelters for them.
And you got the money to do it.
I mean, that's, and I'll applaud you.
Well, Tim Cook's got the money to do it. Mark Benioff's got the money to do it. All these
I'll applaud you.
Right.
I'll be like, that's wonderful.
But make sure you put the homeless shelter in your neighborhood. Make sure you put the homeless shelter in your neighborhood, right in your backyard.
I personally
and welcome them into your home when they stray outside the homeless shelter and say, oh, honey, one of the homeless guys is here. How wonderful. Okay, you do that if you want to start preaching to the rest of us about how much we're haters. When you have bars, would you say bars on your window? You have security guards. You probably have armed guards. Okay, all you high-level people in Silicon Valley, you have everything you need, and then you criticize us for wanting to protect ourselves and being critical of this mess that's going on the left coast. It's a mess.
Oh, it's disgusting.
You know, and that's what we're doing.
It'll be in New York soon. 10 cities, give it, Joe, I don't even give it 10 years.
But Joe, this is the part that people don't want to hear. Why is this happening? Because there is a social breakdown, there's a moral breakdown. And why are we talking about this in Pride Month? Because this lifestyle, again, you talked about short lifespans. We know about disease. We know about unhappiness, depression, suicide, all these things. Why would you support a lifestyle for anybody where once you embrace that in your culture, it just leads to further and further breakdown? We've seen this throughout history. This is not something new. I'm not making this up. Why did Rome fall? If you want to really think about it, because internally they become so corrupt. What was their central corruption at that point in the later Roman Empire? Sex, not just homosexual sex, but sex. In other words, what we would consider since the 1960s this sexual liberation, the homosexuality, the pride marches, the transgenderism, that just all falls under that umbrella. It all falls under that umbrella. So why would we encourage, the same way you wouldn't encourage, we shouldn't, okay, encourage an 18-year-old girl to go out, a heterosexual girl to go out and have sex because it will lead to nothing but bad consequences, okay? It's the same, we say it for the same reason. The bad consequences have a ripple effect out into society. So this LGBT agenda is part and parcel of the whole moral breakdown, the whole social breakdown.
But people seem to accept it.
We'll promote it. Not only accept it. You said the teacher told the kid. The teacher didn't say it wasn't telling them to accept something as an opinion. She stated it to the 6-year-old kid as a fact.
Which actually brings us to the next story. This is in Iowa. This is kind of going around actually where I live in Southern Bergen County, Joe, as well. There is a lot of drag queen reading to kids. I saw
the library hour.
Yeah, but this particular incident was in Iowa where you had a public library featuring kids giving drag queens dollars, basically like a go-go dancer. And 2 of the performers were minors. Now, just as an adult, I would never sanction such an event, nor would I permit my kid to go to it. And if you're going to it, it's not funny for a little kid to be giving $1, like as if this person is a go-go dancer. Right. By the way, because places and names matter, Ames, Iowa, this is where Iowa State University is. This is where this particular event took place. And there were 240 people who attended this event, and it was the 4th one that it took place. So again, 20 years ago, you would have got arrested if you had minors.
Particularly in Iowa.
I mean, minors are participating in this.
Right.
And then you have
they're
little
throwing
kids
they're throwing dollars at them.
These are regular people.
Right.
Like I said, Main Street, USA, and they're perfectly fine with it.
See, this is
I'm not fine with it. There is no way I would let my kid attend something like that.
But if you did something about it, Joe, you're the one who's going to get in trouble. You're the one who's going to get arrested. If you walked in with 100 fathers of those kids that are sitting there, if they did that in Jersey, which I believe they are actually, right? They're doing it somewhere in New Jersey, or at least trying to. If we walked in there with and supported 100 fathers and told every one of those drag queens, listen, we're not here. We don't mean you any harm. You have to leave now. You have to leave. Pack up your stuff. Don't say goodbye. Just leave and don't come back. Not when the kids are here anyway. All right. And then told the people who were on the library, we're suing you. We are suing. We're filing a lawsuit. We're going to fine the ACLJ, not the ACLU, the American Center for Law and Justice, the St. Thomas More Society, any of these legal entities that help in cases like this. Okay. And we're going to sue the you-know-what off you, okay? Until we start punching them back like that, again, not punching literally, but fighting back and resisting, they're just going to run roughshod over us.
And also, this same library basically gained some notoriety a few years back. They held a summer camp to teach kids K through 12. I'm not making this up. K through 12, the art of cross-dressing and drag performance.
It's an art. It's an art now.
K through 12. So that means a kid that's 7 could go to this camp. Are you crazy?
And they're below the age of reason.
Are you
generally
crazy? I don't understand this. I mean, to be honest with you, they make comments. I'm living in the dark ages. You're going to basically send your kid to camp to dress up as the opposite sex.
And that's, by the way, you just said dark age. That's considered enlightenment.
Oh, they're
See,
progressive.
those parents are enlightened. See, the light switch is turned on, whereas two jamokes like us, the light switch is turned off, particularly because we're Catholic. So the light switch is turned off. We don't look forward. We just look, us Catholics, you people, you Catholics, you look backward, say, listen, these are the darkest times that the world probably, I think you can make a very good argument, has ever seen. This great country that we call America is falling deeper and deeper in a swamp, and I'm not using the word swamp in a Trumpian sense, talking about the deep state, talking about this culture that is a deep swamp. We make the Romans look like saints, okay? We make the most depraved societies look civilized, okay? You think about things like this, where you're taking children who, of course, you don't kill first, okay? We have the whole culture of death. So if the child is allowed to live by their enlightened parents who've allowed that child to live and not killed them in the womb, then the parents are going to allow them to be indoctrinated by the teachers, let me not say in all individual teachers, but the teachers' establishment, the education establishment, the state apparatuses, let's say when it comes to, let's say, librarians and what they do in the public spaces and things like that. And we're the dark ones. You're the enlightened ones. In the meantime, as Joe just said, if your kid turns out to be transgender and blows his or her brains out when they're 30 years old, remember something. Don't blame us. Blame yourself. It's your fault that your kid did that. You allowed it to happen to them.
Which takes us again along the same lines to Philadelphia, to particularly Lansdowne, Philadelphia. I actually know someone from there, where I went to school in Pennsylvania. In southeastern PA, basically a public high school had a drag show, and there were some parents that were not for it. And they were berated for basically taking that position. And this is sort of the question I kind of want to bring up after reading that and the article that we just talked about previously. I mean, are kids who are dressing in drag being manipulated by adults who should know better? I mean, this is what I'd like to just pose just for a moment. Are they being manipulated? I mean, kids are very impressionable. Some kids just want to belong. They want to get like some type of acknowledgement of sometimes they have different complexes. They're a little insecure.
They're little kids.
Exactly. Now you have an adult that should know better. And you're basically encouraging a kid. To them, it's funny. You're an open-minded adult. Do you ever think you might be doing damage to that kid? Do you ever think that you might be confusing that kid? Do you ever think that you're opening them up to a road that leads to, like Joe just said, people who don't live to 40? People who do this don't, on average, transgender people, their life expectancy is a little over 30. Their suicide rate is like 9 or 10 times higher than any person who commits suicide.
See, now those are facts.
I'm not making this up.
So when people say, you guys, Joe and Joe, you go against settled science. Again, as Joe mentioned earlier, show us the settled science. The science is not only not settled, the science goes against your narrative. Okay, it does not support the position you take when it comes to how children should be raised. And another thing too, all you lefties out there, you think you're so smart. You know children are confused. Okay, by nature they're confused.
That's why they're doing it.
That's why you're doing it. You're purposely, the place in hell for you, unless you repent, is a very,
There
very.
is no hell.
Oh, that's right. There's no hell.
There's no.
If there is a hell, okay, and you don't repent of corrupting that child, okay, the place that may or may not exist, depending on which Catholic priest you talk to nowadays, is going to be a very lonely and painful place for you, okay? Because what? Because you're destroying the soul of another human being. You're not allowing a human being to live more fully by creating the confusion and then nurturing that confusion as that child develops, gets to the age of reason, then into their preteen years and their teen years. You're not helping them in any way. You're not. What you're doing is you're purposely confusing them so that they grow up to be confused adults, and you're hoping that they're people that are basically just going to be compliant, docile. They get the sex they want. They get the drugs they want. They don't really complain about much. And what do? They vote for the people you want them to vote for. Because remember, Joe, I say this all the time, ad nauseum, I know, but all of this has to do with politics, and politics has to do with this. Because politics, culture, society, it's all together now. Okay, everything is, we said earlier, why is it that they can bring a transgendered person, the drag queen, into the public school? Because the public schools are going to get their money no matter what, because they know they have the politicians in their pocket who are going to continue to tax you, and you're going to keep having to pay for the public school system that you don't have your kids in, number one, and you object to, number two. They laugh at you. They laugh at you because you don't fight. And yes, I'm blaming you, all you people that are just like Joe and Joe. You're just like us. We haven't done what we should be doing. We haven't been organizing and fighting against these people. We haven't been taking in the case of New Jersey, our state back one municipality at a time. All right? We haven't been marching on Trenton. We haven't been doing these things, at least not as much as we should. And that's the only way we're going to fight against them. First and foremost is to speak the truth. As Joe and Joe always say, you have to speak the truth. And second, we have to stop letting them take our money. The only way they have any kind of power is because they have money. Let's start to take our money back and demand that we get our money back, particularly in the form of funding the public education system through our taxes. Start electing people who say, no, you're not taking any more money in property tax for education until we straighten out all this nonsense. You see how fast they will.
But the sad part is a lot of people, there's a lot of people that are against this. I think a lot of rational people. And it's just not even religious people. People who are parents, who are concerned with what's going on, are not for this. But believe it or not, there's a lot of people who just don't think that this is a problem. Because this goes to the root of why we have this show. There is a breakdown in basically the moral compass of our country. Mm-hmm. There is no more right and wrong. Everything is you decide if it's right and wrong. A society does not function that way.
No.
No society in the history of mankind has ever survived.
Do you ever know
with that mentality? And this is where we're at. You talk to people, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that. But this is it. What if it's your kid? Do you have a problem with it?
Maybe they don't.
Well, then
maybe they don't. Let's give a quick shout out. Joe joined us over from Brooklyn, PM from Florida. You're watching the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We're deep into the breach on this particular night, because we're talking about Pride Month. We're talking about the different ways that this LGBT agenda is being rammed down our throat. Joe, let's see if we can put this in some perspective. You tell me if you agree, okay? If you look at, let's say, for argument's sake, any great empire, usually, or great civilization, usually it's when that civilization, all right, I think a good argument would be made to say at all times when that particular civilization was living according and ran a society according to what, let's say, for the most part, even ancient societies, but what they knew to be right and what they knew to be wrong, those societies flourished.
Agreed.
Okay, and it's only when that society abandons those principles. In this case, we know we could look in hindsight and say, well, they abandoned the moral law. They might not have thought of it that way, but we know, let's say, Rome collapsed. Why? Because Rome was so corrupt from within. Okay, and other great civilizations too. And the bottom line is that's the stage we're at now. We have to get back to the moral principles that govern us all. Yes, all of us. the rightness and the wrongness of things.
You know what I always say though to people, like, and I've had this conversation often, those things that you're talking about apply to you whether you acknowledge them or not. And this is how I basically draw that parallel. And we're talking about the natural law, basic right and wrong ideas. If you told me you do not believe in gravity, I say jump off the roof. When you hit the cement, you're going to basically have to acknowledge that there is gravity. If you don't, I'd say do it again. You're going to fall again.
Right.
The principles apply to you whether you acknowledge them or not. That's why the suicide rate is high in this community. That's why the life expectancy is low in this community. That's why alcoholism and drug use is high in this community.
Yes.
I'm not making this up. The natural law applies to you whether you acknowledge it or not.
And this really gets into what the problem is in this country, Joe. I remember 15 years ago, if you were to use the word oligarchs, or if you used the word New World Order, or if you used Illuminati and all these words, they would have looked at you and said, "There's the door. You're a conspiracy nut," and they would dismiss you. It's all in the open now. Okay. So when you look at the world, it's fully acknowledged. The oligarchs call themselves oligarchs now. Okay. Very few people who have a worldview and they want to impose that worldview on everybody. They're not hiding it. You want to know why? They had to hide it then and dismiss people. I remember they used to do that to Glenn Beck. He's a conspiracy nut. And this one, you're a conspiracy nut. And now, like I said, now it's all out in the open. And what we're trying to emphasize to all those people that may, for a time, go along with this agenda, you have to understand, Joe and I are telling you these things. Yes, we get angry, okay, just like you would get angry at anybody who's doing something that's really they shouldn't do. You should allow this to happen to your children, because guess what? We are not your enemy. The ones who want to destroy us and you and your family, those people are the enemy. Because like Joe said, and that's what made me think of this, the natural law applies to you. When you violate the natural law, let's give it an example. When you dress up a 2-year-old child who's a boy and dress him up as a girl, yeah, that's a violation of the natural law, all right? Boys are boys, girls are girls. It's very simple. When you do that, you're bringing the destruction on yourself. You're doing what the slave master wants you to do. You think you're being open-minded. You think you're being tolerant. You think you're being compassionate. Dare I say you think you're being loving. It is not an act of an act of love to lie to anybody, but particularly to children. To lie to a child like this teacher did and say, there's no such thing as a boy or a girl. And my whole point in this little diatribe I went on is that when Joe says that the natural law applies to you, those people who want to convince you to manipulate or violate the natural law, they're out for your destruction also, not just us. There will be nobody there to help you if they win, because we'll be dead and you'll be their slave. And that's not conspiracy theory. All the big banks, all the big corporations are supporting this agenda. The government's supporting this agenda. The public education establishment is supporting this agenda. The mainstream media is supporting this agenda. Are we just supposed to believe all of a sudden that they are really true, the elites? That they're the enlightened people and we're just all stupid, so we must... I mean, Chris Matthews says it, so why shouldn't I just believe him? Or Mark Benioff says it from Salesforce, why shouldn't I just believe him? Or Tim Cook, he runs Google or Apple, I don't know, whichever one of the two. Another big corporation, okay? And then we start to think in our minds, well, they're smart, they're richer than us, they have a better life than us, maybe I should just listen to them.
I don't know.
I know they don't have a better life, and you know that they don't have a better life. Do you understand my point though, Joe? Is that when you say the natural law applies, the destructive effects apply to you too. That's what Joe's trying to say. That's why you need to start waking up and stop letting people bully you into believing something that you know in your heart is a lie. You know all this is lies.
What was that movie? It was a John Singleton movie years ago. It was about like gangs in LA.
Oh, Boys in the Hood. I always liked it.
I always remember a scene in it because I relate it to some degree in my own life when he basically has a father who cares for him, and they were little boys on the street. And his father says to him, when he's a little boy, he's telling him something and he doesn't like to hear it, as many little boys don't like to hear what their father says. And he says to him, you see those kids out there? You wait and see what happens to them as life moves on. Because the father knows what's going to happen to them, because he's seen it. I've seen that with people in my own life who've continued on bad roads. The consequences, our actions have consequences. We all make choices in life. This is every human life. This is not a religious person, a non-religious person. We make choices, but with choices come consequences. And they apply to you whether you like them or not.
Right.
And you cannot get away from it.
And usually you don't like them.
But
let's face it, usually you don't like the consequences.
And the father is telling the son this. And the son at the time probably doesn't, it doesn't compute. But everything he said as the movie goes on comes true. It comes true. And this is where, like I said, a little common sense has to prevail. This defies any type of reason.
Right.
Any type of reason.
But isn't that why? See, you use the right word. See, the practical application of your reason is dialogue, speech, the communicating ideas with another person to reach the truth. Why do you think? And it will always invariably lead to truth, because when you have the truth on your side, you're not going to lose an argument, not for the purpose of winning an argument, but to arrive at truth, not to beat your chest, but to say we've arrived at the truth. This is why these people don't want a debate. They don't want to argue. This goes along the lines of so many things that the left does in particular. It's not only them, but the left, they don't want to talk to you about this. It's a very simple matter of this is accepted, and that's it. You will not argue with it. If you argue with it, we will call you a hater. We will call you all sorts of names. We'll call your boss and tell him that he should fire you. Or maybe we'll call your boss and demand he fire you. We'll have you shunned from polite society. You can't walk into a bar. Okay, you can't walk into a restaurant. You think this is far-fetched?
No, it's real.
They're bringing us all. See, this is why people need to start reading. They're bringing us all into this brave new world that none of us want to go into. Okay, we've seen it. All right, this maybe is a less, at least currently, less violent episode in their war that they've launched against, like you said, reason, okay, and morality. Dare we say God? But nonetheless, we've seen the result. We're not buying what you're selling. We don't want it, and yeah, we're going to keep arguing. We're going to keep fighting. And we know that that's the only way to do it, Joe, because they're not going to debate. They're not going to have a debate over this, because the debate you means that you have something to say. Would you agree with that?
Oh, well,
right. And they want to make believe, or they want other people to believe, that you have nothing to say. Joe Rossinello has nothing to say about this topic because you're a Roman Catholic man and you're a hater. You believe in that guy Jesus, all right? And that means that you're a hater. Okay? Now, that's really what they would say. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I mean, but that's kind of what they would say, if not exactly what they would say. Oh, I had somebody at my job before he got fired 3 years ago. He didn't know I was Catholic, and he thought I was going to agree with him. He put his foot in his mouth. He goes, "Yeah, I'm not really Christian. Those people are haters. They're really backwards looking. I'm into science. I'm forward looking. Okay, didn't know I was Catholic. I couldn't torture. I wanted to torture him, but I didn't do it. I think somebody else told him because he came over and apologized to me. But that's their view. I only use that to bring it up. That's their view. You're a hater and you're backwards looking. You actually, let's say in the case of Roman Catholics, yes, you believe in Jesus Christ. You believe in the moral order. You believe in the church. You think there's a right way to live and a wrong way to live. And yet you're backwards looking. All right, we are forwards looking. Well, if this represents progress, I don't want your progress. Like I said earlier, I don't want your brave new world.
Look at the progressive city of Los Angeles and San Francisco.
That nail on the head, as always, Joe Rossinello. Go look at San Francisco and Los Angeles.
The most progressive city in America is basically living in squalor.
Right.
This is the end result of this disgusting behavior that we're engrossing ourselves in a society. You're living in a city where you have typhoid fever. This is something you haven't seen. This is America.
When's the last time we saw that? Or was it medieval Europe? Or was that the bubonic plague?
Yeah,
but that's coming soon to a theater in Los Angeles and San Francisco near you.
That's
all right?
what you get. That's
Where-
so progressive.
Where
You're
the cops aren't going to want to go in near these people, okay, for fear that they're going to get some sort of a disease, okay? And I mean, and this is why I brought up earlier about, let's say, how empires destroy themselves. The American empire is coming to an end, and I say that as a man, as I could speak for Joe on this. We love our country. Joe and I are born in Newark, New Jersey. We weren't born in Castelnuovo di Conza, Italy. Okay, we are American. We love our country. We do not like what our country has become. Our culture, in particular, has fallen into a deep, deep, deep abyss. And we said it a million times. If you want the politics to change, we have to change the culture first. And if you want the culture to change, we have to change our own lives first. It'd be the first thing I would say to people. Stop letting the slave master have his way. Stop putting money in their pocket. Stop buying their pornography. Whether it's you think it's pornography or not, if Hollywood's producing it, more than likely it's pornography. Stop buying their stupid magazines like we talked about last week. Like, don't let your daughters read Teen Vogue. Don't let your daughters have cell phones. Ooh, I can hear the mothers out there. My daughter needs a cell phone. Okay, whatever. Block some stuff on it. My point is there's so many things that we could do on our own to resist this. And that's what we really have to do, because our America is going deeper and unless it's good people like all of us reaching out to other good people and raising their consciousness to what's right and wrong. All right, this country will fall deeper, and you're going to find yourself in a really bad place, because San Francisco and Los Angeles easily could become, Houston, Texas, or Houston, Texas could become them, or the place you think you live in that's immune from all this stuff. What's to prevent it? If you're not preventing it in your own communities, in your own states, what's to prevent all of this being just nationalized? Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And this is a good segue into our last segment. Basically, this is in Spokane, Washington. A woman, and again, names matter. Her name is Anna Bohach, and she's a mother of 4. She basically started this group on Facebook, 500 Moms Strong. And they protested one of those drag queen story hours.
Good for them.
And they're starting to gain momentum. And I bring this up because more people have to do this. They're out there, and Washington is a very liberal state. This is a woman living, in the state of Washington, and she's basically standing up. This is what we have to do. We have to go to the town councils. We have to vote with our conscience. We have to speak up. We have to do things like this.
Right.
A lot of people, this is a taboo show to have this opinion that we're basically voicing. And here's another thing, we respect people. I respect everyone, to be truthful with you. I am just not for things that we're discussing regarding changing someone's sex, encouraging children to go down a lifestyle that's basically a dead end, and in many cases ends in suicide. I am not for this. And frankly, when the truth becomes a revolutionary concept, a culture is in trouble. And that's exactly what this is. I'm just speaking the truth. And this is a revolutionary idea. This is just straight up and down common sense. Straight up and down common sense. You don't have to be religious to have this view. This is just the view of a concerned parent, if you ask me. Yet, many people are embracing it. I think, to be honest with you, to their demise. I personally think, as Joe says, our society is in trouble. We have lost our way. We have lost our way.
Do you think that people agree with this agenda, or you think in large part, some people do, but I think in large part it's because people do feel bullied, like we were talking about last week, they feel bullied into going along with this agenda.
People just want to get along. I mean, Joe.
I get that. I get that. There's things that I won't talk about in front of some people, because I know that people are sensitive. Okay, I understand that, and yes, for the sake of not causing problems sometimes, because, you know, many people, unfortunately or fortunately, I have a big mouth. Everybody knows where I stand on things, those who agree with me and those who don't. I'll avoid conversations a lot of times. I don't want to get into it because I understand the thinness of people's, the thin skin that people have nowadays to people who are speaking the truth like us. But what I'm saying is there are, in large degree, people who just outright fear for their ability to make a living if they in fact open their mouth. I'm telling you right now, I do not talk anymore. Remember, I used to joke in our earlier shows that I would have a conversation at work. I think I alluded to one in this show. Somebody talked to 3 years. I don't talk about this at work at all. Don't want to get into it. This is completely separate from my job. But I tell you right now, I have a fear. Right? We're not tough guys. I have a legitimate fear because the left is so nefarious that they try to dox me. Okay, I can't speak for Joe, but I feel like they try to dox me, find out who I am, where I live, where I work, try to get to my boss or the company that owns the place that I work, and try to get them to call me a hater and say they need to fire me. I live in legitimate fear of that. Okay, now I'm not the most courageous person in the world, but that's not going to stop me from telling the truth. Okay, I know I don't like the courage that many other people have. Okay,
But people don't want to be hated. There's just a human, like, to be look at anybody like who's done something from a historic perspective. You could look at it from Mahatma Gandhi to Martin Luther King to Abraham Lincoln. The list goes on. People who stood up for something. It takes courage to stand up for something, and you're going to ruffle people's feathers. Frankly, you will be hated in some quarters. That's the price you pay. That's the price for freedom. Freedom is constantly fought for every day. You can't be afraid. You see, people just want to get along. They just want their life to be comfortable. They want to be in. They want to be like in their little cliques and everyone like them. And at the end of the day, that gets you nowhere. And in some cases, when you're talking about things like this, it actually could lead to your demise or to your children's demise. I will not stand for that. Frankly, I can't live with myself. I can't live with myself by taking that road. I never could, actually, to be honest with you. This is even post, you know, like conversion, religion, you know, like where I took my own faith seriously in my 20s. That's just not who I am. And frankly, this is how America was founded, by people who stood up. That's what this show is about, and this is what we have to do. That's what these moms did. This mom, she's actually getting death threats, this woman.
Think about that.
She's a mother of 4. She's getting death threats. Why? Because she's not for drag queens basically having performances in a public library. Do you believe that?
That means that somebody is saying, see, when we talk, okay, the last thing you'll hear out of the mouths of people, not just us, but people like us, okay, no matter how much the other side, and let's just call them the collective left, okay, in all their manifestations, the way they try to convince all Americans that they should be fearful of people like us. I wouldn't threaten anybody's life. I don't care how angry they make me, okay? I'm not threatening anybody's life, not wishing death on people, nor is Joe, nor the people that we listen to. So we are the audience many times when we watch other people, okay, and get their perspective and see what they're talking about. But look at what they do. This woman is safeguarding her child, and she's being threatened. Her life is being threatened, okay? Think about that. Think about that the next time you just want to go along with the agenda. Remember something about these people who you just want to get along with. If you disagree with them, they wish you death, and they will try to incite others into taking your life. Don't think it's not true. What do you think happened? The person who's threatening you might not be the one, but they'll plant the seed in somebody else's mind. That's why we talked about that thing with Brian Sims, where he wanted to dox that woman praying in front of an abortion clinic. Doxing, right? Let her information be known. He gets her information out there. What if somebody who agrees with Brian Sims picks up a gun and goes to that woman's house and shoots her? Is he going to be held responsible for that? But you see what happens when you just try to stand up, even for something as defensible as protecting your own children, you're getting death threats. And if you think that we're not in a battle, a cultural war, because that's what it is. If you're not in the breach, okay, or if you think that that's not where we are, then your head is in the sand. If you think life is just great in America, your head is in the sand. You need to get your head out of the sand, and you need to raise the level of your consciousness to understand there are some serious problems in this country. And this whole topic tonight, this is a serious problem. Not people, not the individual people in the LGBT community, all right? It's the agenda and those who are pulling their strings. Those are the people that we have to fight against, because they will take everything from you, Joe Resinello. They'll take your kids, they'll take your job, they'll take everything. We've talked about that how many times over the last couple of months, where people could go to jail for teaching, for telling a daughter, their teenage daughter, no, you're not a boy. We're not giving you hormones or estrogen or whatever the case might be. In other words, yes, eventually, it's not eventually. Now, in some places in the world, you can go to jail. You think America's not going to adopt that sooner or later? You think?
Maybe in our lifetime, it's possible. That's when you have to go off the grid. I mean, that's when you live. Then I'll become like the Browns in Alaska.
Yeah, but I don't know how to live. I don't know how to live off the grid.
You better learn how to skin. You better learn how to skin a deer.
Listen,
Joe.
I'm not skinning any. I'm not skinning any. First of all, I'm not hunting for elk. Okay, nor then am I going to skin that elk. But really, I guess that's what it comes down to.
I mean,
this
is sick.
This is an agenda that we have to fight against. Again, if parents out there in a particular school district, just to put a finer point on it, you and your school district, if you're just fine with it, and the majority of the people in your school district are, but people need to start protecting their own. Start with your own community. Start with your own families, but start with your own communities where you can actually have more of an influence on things. Okay,
I agree.
Start there. Start to build a groundswell, one community after another. Start to take states back individually. Start to resist, particularly this part of the agenda. And by all means, all you religious people out there, pray for these people. Pray for people who are suffering. They're not being told they're suffering because they're being lied to. We're telling them they're suffering because we're telling them the truth, and we understand it, and pray for them. Okay. But in the meantime, it was a good show, but it's like, it's sad that a lot of this stuff is going on. And rather than getting angry about it, let's just start using our head and start resisting. Start resisting. Start saying no. What do we always say? Got to say no, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one more time, we want to give a shout out to HolyFaith Media. They picked us up. They're going to be sharing our videos over on their page on Facebook, on YouTube, on Bitchute. So we want to thank them, Jonathan Ross and HolyFaith Media, for that. And remember, thank you all for joining our conversation at the front line with Joe and Joe. I'm Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot more meaty topics in the weeks to come, particularly what's going on with the Democratic Party and their we might have to get more into politics in the next couple of weeks. What do you think?
Probably. I mean, it is heating up. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah,
we'll see where it goes.
Well, one prediction that we made, what was it, a couple of weeks ago about the not that this was a brilliant prediction, but we did say that the wagons were going to start to circle around Joe Biden. It has begun. It has begun. Did you hear about that?
Well, I mean, Cory Booker and him had a little bit of a back and forth this week.
Well, I think we ought to get into this maybe next week and a lot of the racial nonsense that's going on in Washington right now. We'll decide. We'll see how the week goes. But long story short is that Joe Biden was talking about working together. Working together in the Senate.
Segregation.
And yeah, he made mention that he used to work with segregationists. Joe, you stepped in it again. I don't know what to tell you, but you stepped in it again. So try to go on YouTube and go look at some of the videos that are going on between Cory